Welcome to Spoilerin Time, a show created by Cordkillers. Cordkillers is the show where Brian Brushwood and I talk about how to watch things. And then once we figured out how to watch them, we watch them and we talk about them right here. We are going to talk about The Larry Sanders Show, episodes 9 and 10 of season 4, Brother, Can You Spare 1.2 Million, and Conflict of Interest. We're also going to talk about What We Do in the Shadows, season 2, episode 9. And we're going to talk about the movie Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. I'm Tom Merritt. As I mentioned, you're Brian Brushwood.
Yeah, dude. Where do you want to jump in? Where are we starting?
Let's start with Master and Commander, The Far Side of the World. This came out of a conversation in our After Talk segment, which is available only to patrons, where we're trying to figure out what to do to bridge the gap between newly released shows. And we had a whole conversation about it that I don't want to re-get into now. Go listen to After Talk if you want to hear it. But Brian had the wonderful idea of what if we rotate choosing movies to go back and watch? And Brian, thank you for choosing Master and Commander,
because
The Far Side of the World.
I didn't realize what I was doing 1 week ago because I suddenly realized, oh, shoot, I'm responsible for how everyone spent those hours and how they're going to feel about it, and I have to defend it. Luckily, watching it, I had only seen it once before. It's what, about 20 years old? 2003-ish?
2003.
Okay, so not only did I recommend it to you guys, but I also, you can't get kids to do anything, but what you can do with your dad status is say, you are only obligated to watch the first 5 minutes of this. My 16-year-old, Penny, loved it. And I don't know how much of her loving it. First of all, it's a finely crafted story. I'm so glad that it held up to the way I remember it. But I suspect some amount of how much she enjoyed it is because we just finished Red Seas Under Red Skies, which is a lot of nautical stuff in a fantasy setting, and you know, kind of like if you read a bunch of Martian books, you feel like you've lived on Mars, and so you're more interested in Martian stuff. You know, that's what I felt like was happening as we're in a very nautical mindset, and I'm so glad that Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan holds up, because that's exactly what this is.
Well, this is based on 3 different novels. Like on paper, you'd look at this and be like, there's no way this should work. It took 3 different Patrick O'Brian novels and stole from each of them to create one movie. But remember, this is director Peter Weir. Dead Poets Society, The Mosquito Coast, The Truman Show, The Year of Living Dangerously, Gallipoli. He's only done one movie since this, but his direction, I think, helps. I mean, the writing is fantastic as well. And we should give credit to John Colley, who co-wrote the screenplay with Peter Weir. But I sat down Sunday morning, early before my wife was awake, and just put this on. I'm like, this is going to be my morning watch as I ease into the day. I got my coffee, got my breakfast. I'm just going to watch this. And I kept thinking, I'll probably have to interrupt it. I'll probably have to pause and get back to it later. No way. That was what I was most impressed with, is I kept thinking, okay, I'll just wait for this part and then I'll pause and go do something. I couldn't. I never got to that part where I wasn't interested in exactly what was going to happen in the next scene.
I think that is the real joy I got from this, is that it feels less like a thing that happened and more like a place I went. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
From the wrapping my mind around the fact that, oh yeah, absent the internet, you need to make your own music, your own poetry, your own whatever. You have a lot of very tedious knots to tie and untie or whatever. Oh, terrible things happen. Young men have to become men, capital M, earlier than they should, as their arms are chopped off or whatever. It was, and yet it managed to, for me, delight and surprise with little moments like a fake Charles Darwin, who I can't ever remember. Like very clearly, he's supposed to die, right? But oh no, wait, he doesn't, and he gets to go to the Galapagos and gets to be fake Charles Darwin, and then on top of that, and by the way, there's nothing I love more than the unabashed building of like, well, you know the worst thing on the planet, right? The French. And I saw that flag unfurl, and I heard from my kids, oh, like it was awesome. It was awesome.
You know what's interesting is that in the books that this movie stole from, the Americans create the Acheron, and they are the bad guys.
Oh, that's great.
And they changed it to the French because they wanted
to make money.
To make money in America.
I mean, I'll be honest. I want to see a remastering of this where it is an American crew that is the fastest ship, and just and only through the sheerest luck and ingenuity of the captain could they possibly. I'd love to see that. I would love to see that, because one of the things about this being French is that it feels weird. Like, we know the English and French, maybe don't get along all the time, but the changing to the French is not historically inaccurate. The English and the French had a combative relationship. At this time,
there was
right?
constantly hit contracts out on each other.
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah, and not just the English and the French, the English, the French, the Americans, the Spanish, the Portuguese, like everybody was doing the privateer thing, and so it was fun to see that. It was fun to see all the other historical accuracies that they didn't shy away from, but leaned into, and I feel like, I'm sure this takes liberties with what really happened on ships at the time, but I felt like they tried to show you things that were real from that time, and use those rather than oversimplify.
They certainly felt real. My goodness, though, if there's one thing that I wouldn't have denied it, but boy, did I feel it watching it again. What a talented actor Russell Crowe is.
He nails it, doesn't he?
His ability to project authority, intensity, presentness is just extraordinary.
Yeah, the entire cast really comes together, but he shines. Like, that role. I guess not everybody's going to love a sea story like this. And I know it was up against Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King that
Pirates
year.
Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah, it had and Pirates of the Caribbean. So it had a lot of competition for adventure stories. But there's something about this, and the reason I set it up as on our after talk, the reason I set it up as being the inspiration, the stories it's based on being the inspiration for the spaceship battles, is all that stuff I love about Star Trek and ships and space battles is here. It's all in here. Like the way the captain commands the ship and has to balance the needs of the crew and maintain loyalty because they're isolated in the middle of nowhere, with demands on their resources that must be met. Like, it's all in there, and it's fantastic.
I'm treading on very thin ice right now, but I so enjoyed Master and Commander, and I was so pleased that my eldest daughter enjoyed it, and she was the only one to sit through all of Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. I made the mistake of going back and looking, kind of skipping around through Wrath of Khan after watching Master and Commander. And I understand technology changes over time and pacing changes over time, but my goodness, Master and Commander, I'm about to commit blasphemy, is a superior movie in every way to Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It is a very, very good movie.
Yeah, it's masterfully done.
Bryce, what expectations did you have when you came in on this one?
I thought it would be more. I'm not a big fan of period pieces, and similarly of war movies, and so I was hesitant that it would be very heavy on both of those, and it's not. It really focuses on kind of life aboard a ship, a battleship at that time, and I ended up really enjoying it. I definitely when I loaded it up and got my Stars trial to watch this, I definitely saw that 2 hour mark and thought, ooh,
Well,
we're about to do this.
By the way, I felt that as a dad, and I felt that as the guy who said, "Why don't we watch this movie?" So I am very thankful that it seems to have landed well.
But
go ahead.
But I ended up really digging it. We were talking about this over the weekend. But there's a game I played recently where that takes place on a battleship like this, and to win, you have to learn the broad strokes of how a battleship works and how life aboard is on it. And so it was cool to kind of to connect those dots. And that was cool. It was cool to see that in action and to really see, especially once they start thinking of a mutiny, like, oh yeah, there's kind of no rules. Like, there's kind of a president and there's kind of no rules. It was great. Another great Russell Crowe was fantastic, especially in that bit of I am in charge and I need to solve this.
That's a really good way to put it. I think that is the secret treasure of this movie. It is a meditation of what it means to be a leader in to understand that you are alone adrift in the dead of space, and you either have a leader, you either are a leader, or you're going to shut the hell up and do what you're told, but there's no room for anything in between. Yeah. And it's like, in that regard, I found it rather inspiring, he says, from his studio.
There are a lot of...
First Mate Bryce, tell me how awesome this story is, or I'll cut your arms off.
Hey, listen, Bryce. Between criticizing this movie or having to feed between criticizing this movie and having to feed Brian's ego, I suggest you choose the lesser of two evils.
All right.
But the other interesting thing was, I think either while I was watching it or maybe before, I had read online how they wanted this to be a big franchise because it's a big book franchise, and it ended up not happening because Pirates of the Caribbean was that same year. But it's interesting looking at the different decisions that they make in this movie and the things that they probably wouldn't have made or things that they would have done differently if it wasn't trying to be a franchise, right? Like, I don't know that they would have killed off the guy who everyone had the heebie-jeebies about. I think you would have seen the captain be more of a, I don't know, kind of modern.
You think that was because they wanted it to be a franchise that they killed the lieutenant?
I think so. I think partially.
That seems like a first episode Darth Vader that you kill off. I don't know.
I don't know. I think that would have been more of a feather in his cap.
Because I was expecting the captain to save him and teach him a lesson, and him to continue to struggle with his indecisiveness. Mm-hmm. I was not expecting him to just kill himself. And yet, when he did, it felt more real to me.
Yeah, right. Like, I'm not saying it would have been the right choice, and I think what they did was better. But I think if this wasn't trying to be a multi-thing, I think they would have tried to make the captain look even better by saving the day.
I will definitely back that sentiment when it comes to, that wasn't the surgeon who handed over that sword.
Oh yeah, but the ending is like even better by not finishing everything.
Oh no, I agree 100%. And that's a weird thing for me to say, because that is a fairly stereotypical first beginning of a franchise move to set up that twistaroo. But knowing that this is the beginning and the end, and that's all there was, still loved it. Still loved it. It played for the family, played for me. It was great.
Yeah. 100% agree. Anything else on Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World?
Wikipedia has an interesting note. One of only a few hundred films with an all-male cast.
There was a moment.
There's some female extras, but not
that I was casting around trying to spot any ladies, and then thought, nope, I'm gonna bet they're pretty much historically accurate. Yeah. By the way, that is one of the fun things about Scott Lynch's Red Seas Under Red Skies, is that it's a very boys and girls club, and there's a lot of bunking up that happens. It's great.
All right, that is Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. Let's talk about What We Do in the Shadows, Season 2, Episode 9, which is called Witches. See what I did there?
Yeah. Dude, the star was the goat. The goat was the best. That goat keeps showing up. What's funny is we were talking about the show. Me and my co-host on Monologue, Jason Murphy, were infatuated with it, constantly shouting Guillermo. But he explicitly said, "Oh, well, this latest one is not one to watch with your daughters."
Which you also asked us, because I know you made a whole point last week of not. You made the executive decision because there was a lot of sexy talk in songs and stuff, and in an episode about draining vampires of their goods to death. I think at one point I even said all the same, like, you shouldn't show this to the kids now.
Yeah, it's one of those. I don't know.
Wow.
This one felt like there was one Band-Aid ripoff. First of all, the kids haven't seen either of the last two, and probably won't. But this one felt much more like we spent more time waiting for a Band-Aid to be ripped off, and then a Band-Aid gets ripped off, compared to 2 weeks ago. I loved it, man. I loved it. The deeper they go into how the supernatural world looks to vampires, the happier I am. I mean, there's nothing about this that I'm not having a great time with.
And one of the interesting things was no BC stories. It's all witches all the time, all the way through.
Yeah. No, I guess the B plot was
the door,
the puzzle room. Puzzle room was the B story.
There are certainly B plots within witches. You're right. But I mean, there's not, like, everybody's in the witch area, right? There's no B plot in the sense of a separate story where Colin's off doing this other thing, which we've seen in other episodes. Like, we're all in the same place for this all the way through. Did
you guys have a moment where you felt like you were supposed to recognize some of the actors playing the witches, or like I had to pause and ask Jason, like, is this like a Vampire Council moment where I'm supposed to get something?
No, I stopped pretty early on and looked up IMDb to be like, nope, okay, good, and took my mind off the hook from that point. But yeah, I was wondering that because they've done it before, so I'm like, is this going to be Celebrity Day Witch? And it wasn't.
Yeah. I suppose the only the Band-Aid rip moment, because the whole time I was imagining watching it with my kids, and then. And I was fairly comfortable with all of it, like semen, that's boy juice, whatever, blah blah blah, and then it gets to the end where there's that like, I say, oh boy, I'm still fully tumescent. Do you want me to finish you off and then never talk about it? And like that would be the only that was an actual explicit discussion of sex that would be a little bit awkward in front of the kids.
Yeah, I mean, I got kind of tired of the joke, but then I think I got so tired of the joke that it then became funny how tired of the joke I was. So which is something that this series can pull off sometimes, is like, we'll just take a joke that's kind of dumb and we'll just keep betting on it till the point where you're like, okay, now it's just ridiculous. But everything else about this was great. They're, like you said, their interaction with the witches, and Guillermo saving the day by striking a bargain to provide an unlimited supply. This just, it, even though it's the penultimate episode, which maybe I would have liked to see more building up to the end finale, it's not really that kind of series where we've got a true story arc going on, so I was fine with that.
Can I throw you a little writer's room move? Feel free to throw this away, but the only way I think this could have been just a little bit better is, yes, it's a fun twist that Guillermo negotiates the deal and comes up with a branding. Aside from it, wouldn't it have been great if, what's his name, zombie applesauce guy was the one in charge of the account? Haley Joel Osment, because you remember
from episode 1
they started from the beginning of this season, that's a Haley Joel Osment move Wouldn't it be great if that could have been the surprise at the end that he's like, yeah, I put him in charge of that account, whatever.
But now Guillermo is kind of becoming like that guy.
Yeah.
Thought about that.
And that requires booking Haley Joel Osment again.
Well,
so
I understand. Look,
yeah, it's not impossible they didn't have that same thought, and just
Topher,
couldn't make it happen.
that's right. That's his name.
Topher, yeah. Yes, indeed. Well, next week it will be Theatre des Vampires, written by Jermaine Clement, Sam Johnson, Stephanie Robinson, and Paul Sims. So we will see what happens. That any other thoughts on What We Do in the Shadows?
Spoiler alert, it's good.
Let's talk The Larry Sanders Show, episodes 9 and 10 of season 4. Brother, Can You Spare $1.2 million? About Larry having money problems because his business manager failed him, at least in Larry's point of view. And Conflict of Interest, where Janine Garofalo's character gets an arc where she and her boyfriend, Bob Odenkirk, are booking too many of his clients on Larry's show.
Best of breed on both of these. Like I don't think I've loved 2 in a row as much as these in a while. It's I love them because the show becomes the backdrop and not the focus. I love them because they bring something new to the table. Let's start with Brother, Can You Spare $1.2 million? The fact that the whole thing ends up with a full-on Three's Company mix-up that turns out to whoopsie doodle also maybe not be a mix-up, and the ambiguity of like, as long as those checks keeps showing up, like we're gonna keep torturing this guy. It was I loved it. It delivered that rare and beautiful gift of a surprise, and I dug it. What about you?
I thought Brother, You Can Spare $1.2 million was solid. The premise was a little expected, but the execution wasn't. And so I'm like, oh, okay, I like what they did. They made me think, they taught me 2 + 2 is 5, and then they proved it was 4. And I'm like, yes, great show. Conflict of Interest, I thought was above and beyond, because it was not what I expected. I did not expect to have the conflict of interest be Paula. And to have Larry's agent involved. And it was a more unexpected storyline, arguably probably less well executed than the previous one in some ways, because it was a little simpler of a plot. But I love them both too. I think if I had to choose though, I'd pick Conflict of Interest as my favorite.
I think you said a lot of things that I thought, and if my feet were held to the fire, I would confess out loud that it was fun to see Saul Goodman make it out with Paula, and to know
with reality bites.
Well, and plus also to know that they came up, in the same group of comedians, and I believe this would have been after the Ben Stiller show that they both worked on.
I actually went and looked that up. I was curious about that too.
Before Mr. Show, right?
Yes.
So there was something. Just as I irrationally enjoyed watching Janine Garofalo make out with Colin Farrell. No, not Colin Farrell. Well, what's his name?
Firth.
No, not Colin Farrell. Whatever.
Colin O'Leary. Colin O'Brien.
Colin Robinson.
Colin Quinn.
Colin Quinn.
Colin Quinn. Thank you.
I would have been happy with Colin Robinson. I felt irrational affection for that moment. I felt that irrational affection even more with it being Bob Odenkirk, having watched so much more of his story, going through all that time. I don't know. It felt like a nostalgic time bomb. I liked it a lot.
Yeah. Conflict of Interest was, I texted you guys, was the most Gen X of the Larry Sanders Show I've seen.
Full stop.
From Beck opening with a not hit, but definitely the kind of Beck song you would have imagined he was singing when busking on Hollywood Boulevard.
What direction do you think they gave Beck? Like, do you think any of that was planned, or was he just told, we just want you to play a bad song? Go.
I wonder if they said
too long.
He was probably like, well, what do you want me to play? I'm totally imagining now, right?
Yeah.
Let's say it was like, what do you want me to play? And they're like, well, we don't want you to play a hit. because what we want to do is be upset that you didn't play a hit. And he was like, oh, well, yeah, I've got, 100 songs that I used to busk with. What about this? And, they're like, great. Yes, that's the one. Perfect. But the other way it could have gone is he actually just made it up off the top of his head right then.
I would be more inclined, if I was going to bet $5, that it's the latter, because there's moments where he repeats lines and the rhymes don't work, and it's like, I don't think that was in the bank. I think he literally was told.
You're persuading me that I think it's probably the second, because you're right. It really just felt like somebody making it up as they go along.
And he's good enough that I do believe he could make up on the spot a good song. I believe he could also decide to phone in 75% of a good song and also
like, how
screw
good
some
do you want it
parts
to
up.
be? 50, 25%? Like, I can calibrate whatever you want. Jennifer Aniston being on when she's a budding star and not only a budding star, but she's the Jennifer Aniston of the Jennifer Aniston hair, where she's the hot star right now on Friends. And there are also other friends.
Yeah, and they're still arguing about who's the hot one.
No, it was just I really, like, nostalgia-wise, loved that particular episode.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts on Larry Sanders Show?
No. Although now you have me thinking of who's the hottest friend, and now 25 years later, I know it's Lisa Kudrow because I've been watching Space Force.
No, it's Joey, obviously. All right, folks. I meant the hottest star, which of course is Jennifer Aniston. That's it for the Spoilerin Time episodes. We are in that feared area where not as many new things are coming out. Part of that's just because it's summer. Part of it's because of the virus. So as you noticed, we did a movie rewatch. What will we be starting to watch next week? Will it be another movie? Will it be another series? We will decide that on After Talk. So if you're a patron, make sure you pick up After Talk from patreon.com/Cordkillers, or you can just check our show notes and Bryce will put it in there once we have decided. Thank you all for supporting us and listening, and we'll spoil you again next time.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.